My dad died at 34 years old from alcoholism. He drowned in our bathtub. My son was sitting in his room and I was looking out my window and all I could imagine was my son finding me like I found my dad. And I couldn't do that to him. I prayed and I told God, I have got to do something.
What was it like 19 years ago? Who was Tammy 19 years ago?
That's good. Let's hear that.
So 19 years ago, right about now, Tammy was a mess. I weighed about 85 pounds. Jaundice, liver was failing. I had pancreatitis 3 times. Pretty much I figure I probably had about a month to live if I wouldn't have quit when I did. I'll share a little bit about my last few days, if that's all right.
Please.
So I worked at Sidelines in Lambertville. It was the only one open at the time. I was very functioning when I worked or when I drank. I worked all the time, 70, 80 hours a week. It's kind of funny because I didn't think Chad knew that I was an alcoholic. And one day, just not too long ago, he pointed out, like, you really believe that? And I'm like, yeah, because I was at work all the time. He's like, no, Mom. I was like, oh, okay, let's face the real life, right? So anyways, I was at work, drank during the day when I was a manager there. I got off work, went downstairs in the basement with everybody else and drank. And I remember sitting in Eric's office and my best friend and another person were there. And I remember them saying, it's so weird that I can remember this. We need to call an ambulance right now. She's going to die.
Wow.
And the ambulance came. Out on a stretcher I went. That's in Lambertville. Chad went to Whiteford. I grew up in Bedford, so everybody knew me. So now the next day, everybody's asking, Chad, why'd your mom get wheeled out of Sidelines? All of that. At the hospital, blood alcohol 0.399.
Wow.
Pretty much IV'd me, and they gave me a yellow piece of paper that said, refrain from drinking alcohol. Be on your way. That was it. Like, not you have a problem, not your eyes are yellow. You had that, how alcoholics have that yellow, your eyes yellow, and then you have that reddish film over them, kind of. Yeah, that's my eyes. Cheeks were sunk, just very, very sick. Well, of course I'm going to drink the next day because I'm an alcoholic, right? You're just going to give me a piece of paper and say, don't drink.
Yeah, thanks.
So when I say that this was God, the universe, whatever everybody believes, I know God, and I believe God. I believe I know him.
Yeah, there it is.
And so anyways, I went to a friend's house who I knew had alcohol there because I could drink more. So I was waitressing that day at 4. And I know that day I went to that house to continue to drink. So I would get fired that day. So the next day I would quit drinking. I went to work completely. I mean, mind you, 0.399 the night before, and I didn't stop. So imagine what my blood alcohol was, at least 0.399.
Wow.
Went to work, was a complete excuse my language, shit show. Ended up getting fired the next day, which would have been March 9th. Called Eric, Jerry, Chris, all of them, begging them for my job. And they're like, Tammy, we just can't. We just can't. And my dad died at 34 years old from alcoholism. He drowned in our bathtub. My son was sitting in his room on this day and I was looking out my window and all I could imagine, it had nothing to do with me at that point, was my son finding me like I found my dad.
Wow.
And I couldn't do that to him.
Yeah.
And I got on the ground and I cried and I screamed and I yelled and I prayed and I told God, I have got to do something or you've got to help me.
Yeah, please.
And he had placed people in my life throughout years that helped me get through to get sober.
What did it start with that day? I mean, what was the next step? Did you just stop? Did you have to go to a treatment center?
No, I stopped. I just stopped.
Whoa.
Stopped.
Good for you.
Wow. I was that girl that was puking yellow bile every day. I was shaking. I was doing shots of Listerine sometimes just to get me to the store for my vodka. Little 10, those little bottles of vodka. I had at least 10 in my car at a time. It was always like,
that was day to day, every day
to day, every day drinking for 7 years.
Stopped.
I just stopped.
And what was the withdrawal?
Well, I feel like I was already withdrawing. Every day I was puking yellow bile and so sick that I think it all I hallucinated a little bit. I remember.
That you did that on your own?
I did on my own.
Lucky you're alive. You're just lucky you're alive.
I talked to a lot of doctors and nurses.
That's a miracle.
Yeah,
it is a miracle.
It is.
It really is.
I think it's just safe to say that Tammy is a living, breathing miracle.